Hi everyone, this is Britt Simon. I thought I'd just take a few minutes to take a few questions to see if there's any questions I can answer. I don't have a particular agenda, no real points to make, but I'm sure we'll have some questions, some standard questions that people would like to ask. So, hi Amin, how are you doing? So the first few people are joining already, and welcome to you all. Right, so and I'm going to try and jump into questions straight away. So you sent documents 3 times. Is that an issue? No, not really. KCC are overwhelmed with inbox emails, obviously. You sent your documents 3 times. It shouldn't really make a difference. They should be able to cope, and that's presumably to the KCC documents email address anyway, so I'm less concerned about that. But no, not particularly. Shouldn't cause a problem. Hello to all of you saying hi. Good morning, Chase Dream. How you doing? Right. Good evening. So let me just scroll down, see if there's some questions here. Thank you for all the welcomes and good evening. I appreciate that. Gorky from the Honduras, for example. What about the DV2020 winner? Those people who are waiting for interview schedule. So DV2020, the only answer I can give is that you have to wait for the Gomez case outcome. We've waited a long time. It's frustrating that we've waited this time, but clearly the issues at hand are not easy or simple to solve. And so we're just waiting for Judge Mehta to make a decision. There is nothing anybody can do on DV2020 until Judge Mehta makes that decision. Evan says, any better news? Not particular better news. No, I don't have any news to share. I just wanted to answer some questions. Oh, thank you, Christo. That's very nice. Christo Muller in Germany, I presume, Christo? Just an assumption there from the name. Okay. You won 2022. Your case number is 20,000. When people quote their case numbers and they don't give a region, I don't know if they understand, but the number is meaningless without understanding the region and the year, right? So you're 2022, but are you Africa? Are you Europe? Are you Asia? You could be any of those 3 regions with that case number of 20,000. So it doesn't mean anything at all without the region. I answered this question already just now. Yusuf, this is an interesting question. What will happen after the judge issue an order not in our favor? I mean, the thing is that we don't know what the judge is going to decide. We can see how, we can try and assume how he's thinking, but it really is better to try and wait for the actual outcome, for the order. I feel confident. The lawyers feel confident. The hearing, the 4.5-hour hearing the other day was really the government didn't put up any arguments, and there have been no arguments, that say why they shouldn't be doing what they should actually be doing. But the government is basically saying, look, COVID happened. We're doing the best we can. And the rest of us don't agree that it's the best they can. So, we hope to get a judgment that helps them process more people between now and the end of the year, September 30th, and preferably, and this is the big thing, preserves visas for issuance after September 30th. Now, we're not likely to get that second part of the order before the end of the year, in my opinion. I think Judge Mehta may make us wait, as he did in DV 2020, until the final day. He waited until the final day to actually preserve those visas. He may just instruct the government, do the best you can until September 30th, show me evidence that you're doing the best you can, and then we'll revisit the issue at the end of the year, and hopefully he would then preserve visas. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. And if he doesn't do any of that, then September 30th will be the end of the road. And the only remaining hope at that point will be the Meng Amendment number 1, which is going through its process right now, but is not a guaranteed law yet. So we have to be careful in talking about that one. It is not a guarantee. And I have to say the lawyers seem negative about that. They seem they seem to suggest that, yeah, it's a bill, it's a suggested bill, but it won't make it in. Well, time will tell whether it makes it in or not. I was following up on docs. They sent a generic reply to the email I sent to. Is the generic reply a good sign? No, it's just a generic reply, right? It doesn't mean anything. The only reply that is really useful is the one that says, congratulations, you are current for, well, there's two actually. Congratulations, all of your documents have been received and are processed and you're ready for scheduling. That's a good one. That's documentarily qualified. And the other one that to me is interesting or exciting is the one that says you're current for interview scheduling. That means they're actively trying to schedule your case right now. That doesn't, neither of those guarantees you're going to get an interview though. So really the exciting thing, I guess, is the 2NL that says, here's your interview date, right? Can I comment on the Rosales case? It's filed on January 11th and it's still pending. Yeah, it's still going on. This is the case that started off as Jacob, of course, and it's still going on. There's a chance of a class action coming out of that, but it's not decided yet. That's ongoing. We just have to wait and see what happens there. There's nothing much more I can add on that. Ad fectum, interesting name. Go plaintiff. Do you think the U.S. consulate in Montreal will start processing cases if the judge rules in our favor? No. No, I don't. Montreal, for whatever reason, have stayed closed, right? And a judge's order can't tell a closed embassy to open. So unless the conditions in Montreal change to the point where the US embassy feel they can open and start doing interviews, I don't think it's going to change. They are still going to work the way they're working. Now, if the judge took the frankly amazing step of changing the prioritization, then possibly there'd be a chance. But it's the 28th of July. In a normal year, the final interviews for September scheduling would be sent out basically by now or by the end of this week, right? In this year, we probably will see September interviews still being scheduled in the first part of next month. But without the lawsuit coming up with a dramatic win, then no, I don't think it's going to change Montreal's mind, frankly. And it would need, the judge to be clearly instructive, prescriptive about the prioritization. Because my understanding is I think Montreal is doing some interviews, but none of the DV interviews, right? That's my understanding. I don't know what's going to happen about the class certification. Each person that is considered for a class, based on how the class is defined, and the lawyers for other groups can decide whether they want to be a part of that class or not. So right now, for example, the Go plaintiffs, represented by Charles Cook and Greg Siskind and Jeff Joseph and Aaron Hall, etc., that team have not said whether they would be a part of a class or not, and it will depend partly how the class is defined. So we have to wait and see how that class is defined and what the lawyers' reactions are behind the scenes. So I can't really say, what's going to happen there. That's really up to the lawyers to figure out, and also whether the government accepts or the judge agrees that there should be a class certification in that case. There's so many questions open at the moment, and I can't answer them. Nobody can really. Do you think the new amendment will postpone or affect the final judgment? Number of visas will be reserved. Are you talking about the Meng amendments? The Meng amendments won't come fast enough, in my opinion, to affect the judgment by Judge Mehta. The Meng amendment, if that comes through, would be a later effect. It would affect us down the road a little bit, and it would free things up. If allowed to go into law, it would free things up for multiple people, lots of people. But that's a totally separate issue, and I don't think it's going to be voted into law before the end of September, and therefore we'll have a judgment in the Judge Mehta case before that time. So we'll know, what will happen. Would that change the number of reserve visas? Well, it wouldn't change the number of reserve visas in the lawsuits, but it would make more people able to process their cases, because yes, it basically reopens the possibility to process DV2020 and DV2021 after the deadline has passed, right? So yeah, it would be good news if it can become law. It'd be great news if it could become law. To follow to join, my spouse will be interviewed with me, or she will be interviewed after you go to USA. Okay, I thought I'd dealt with this one from you before, actually, but follow to join is a process where you as the main selectee are being adjusted status in the USA, and your family member, your derivative, is still in your home country or some other third country. In that case, you have to file an I-824. It's called the follow to join process, and your case will already have been decided. You don't need to interview again, but your derivative will have an interview, a very brief, very easy, quick interview in that person's country of residence. And so you don't travel to be with them, if that's what you're asking. And it wouldn't, so, but the assumption here is that you're in the USA. So you're saying after I go to the USA, that doesn't make any sense, right? You need to clarify what you mean, really. Are you in some other country but not with your derivative spouse, or, let me know what you mean, because your question leads me to suggest that you're not on the follow to join process. In your estimation, what should DV2022 winners expect? Right, so I don't want to make any predictions about where the numbers get to, but I can tell you that it's pretty obvious already that DV2022 is going to be off to a slow start. We're not going to see many interviews scheduled in October, probably not many in November and December either, right? If the lawsuit currently going through for DV2021 achieves a clear instruction to the government about how they must operate in future lotteries, then that could change, right? If, for example, the judge says this prioritization scheme that you've got going on with DV lottery visas being at level 4, that's illegal and you must never do it again, right? That extra bit needs to be in there. If he says that, which would be very unusual in my opinion, if he says that, then it could change the trajectory of DV2022. But if DV2022 continues with this prioritization, then it's going to be bad news for DV2022 until that prioritization is lifted, right? Because if DV is in level 4 and getting the scraps of the appointments, then we can't get anything close to the quotas, the national, the regional and global quotas. We can't get anything close to that with the prioritization scheme in place. And we're off to a slow start in DV2022 anyway, because all of the processing time is going towards DV2021 at the moment, as it should be. There is always a slow start, but I think it's going to be particularly slow for DV2022. And then the other factor, of course, is that we might see additional strain on resources because DV2020 and DV2021 folks may have to be processed after September 30th. And that's going to be at the same embassies that currently can't cope with all of the DV2022 cases. So, yeah, of course, there's going to be an impact, right? Unless some radical change is made. And for those of you that are about to say, oh, that's not fair for DV2022, well, buckle up, Buttercup, because the fight that has been going on in DV2020 and DV2021 is helping you in DV2022. And hopefully we get some sort of way of avoiding further lawsuits in DV2022. But if not, then we'll be back in court, right? We'll be fighting that again for DV2022. So, the reality is, yeah, it's not fair. Life's not fair at the moment. Tough luck on all of us, frankly, from COVID. But the government is being, beaten to crap in court by all the lawyers for the way that they've handled things, right? So that's the best we can do at the moment. Okay, let me just find my place again. Oh, damn it, it skipped. Okay, let me find some of these questions. Okay, long question here about Fiji. Here in Fiji, we have a lockdown in April, May, and June. Cases that were to be interviewed in those months were informed they'll reschedule. Your interview was supposed to take place in June, but those interviewed in August already. Interesting. Contact the embassy. This has nothing to do with KCC at this point. The embassy handles your cases. Contact the embassy and tell them that you're aware that there's August cases, and clearly, as a June rescheduled case, your case should be handled first. That's just obvious, but you need to contact them and ask for that and make sure that happens. Okay, no, there's no need to go to KCC about that. It's entirely with the embassy themselves. Okay. I'm a 2022 winner with AF 27,000. Do I need a sponsor or just the host? The normal advice I give is get an I-134, which is a form of sponsorship that someone in America gives to you to say that they will help you through the process. That can either be your host, the person you're describing as your host, the person that's agreed to have you stay with them for some time when you arrive. It could be a third party. It could be someone else. It doesn't have to be the host, right? But it helps tremendously having that form at the interview. Sometimes it's asked for and it's needed. Sometimes it's not asked for, but you're better off having that form in hand and being prepared rather than going to the interview and not being prepared. So I would have it if I were you. Is good luck a class action now? No, it's not, Mohammed, not yet. In fact, they haven't even asked for that. But it's 24,000 people, so it's big class, if you like, of its own. It's a big group of its own. It's not a class action at this point, though. What's wrong in the embassy in Ethiopia? They're not doing as fast. There's no embassy that's doing as fast as they should be. It's not just Ethiopia, it's the whole world. Ethiopia is doing the same thing that every other embassy that's open is doing, and that is prioritizing other cases ahead of DV. We don't agree with that prioritization, but that's what they're doing, and they've been told to do that by the government. So we're fighting that in court. It's not a surprise. Shouldn't be a surprise to you. Every embassy is going through that same position at the moment. Okay, 2022 AS28XX. You chose Abu Dhabi. What do you think about the time of interview? No idea when you'll be interviewed. I wish I'd read that to start with. I have no idea. I can't predict your interview date. It depends on when you get documentarily qualified. It depends on how many cases they have that get documentarily qualified before you, and so on. All sorts of things. There's no way I can predict it. Do you think the USA international travel ban will affect the DV2021 selectees? No, because as an immigrant, you're not subject to those travel bans. So no, we have an NIE. What about DV2020? I already answered. Regarding the DS260, should I fill in all the addresses I've lived or actually where you've had a residence? Yeah, put in all the addresses where you've lived. And in my way of looking at that, where you lived is not where you stayed for a few days like a hotel or an Airbnb. You didn't live there. At the time you go to a temporary residence like that for a week or 2 weeks or a month even, if you keep another address, another home address, which is where important mail goes, where your bank statement goes and all those things, and you've maintained that address, that's your address, not the temporary residence that you're in. Okay. Now, if you go somewhere for a year, it's hard to say that that isn't a real move. You actually moved there for a year. A year is not a short period of time. So a week, a few days, maybe a month or perhaps 2 months. Yeah, all of those are temporary, but a year, that's not temporary, right? That you actually moved there. Andrea, you're asking, is there any chance of an interview date? I have no idea. And it's not 2 months. All of the August interviews are done now. They're all scheduled, right? We have September left, and there are already interviews scheduled in September. So, we're running very short on time. I think people are giving a countdown like 82 days left, 81 days left, or whatever it is. There isn't that much time left. There's nothing like that much time. We've got a few days left, effectively, because in the next few days, the next week to 2 weeks, you need to be scheduled for September. Otherwise, you're not going to get scheduled for September unless the lawsuit wins a big, big win. Okay. Ferris, they started unlocking. Yeah. Can we consider that as a good sign? I don't think it's a good sign as such. It's a good sign that they're getting through their email box. But it's not really a good sign as such. It's just normal. It's just a normal thing. But we shouldn't be excited when finally they answer a bloody email after 5 weeks. That's the minimum expectation we should have, right? Could the judge order to reserve more DV2020 winners? I tend to agree with the government on that. On that one. So the whole thing was that the judge made a calculation, and we disagree with that calculation. Our side, the lawyers for our side disagree with that calculation. Fine. However, it was important to get that preservation of visas on the 30th of September. Judge Mehta actually went massively out of his way to make sure we got that preservation of visas. And so if that second statement is true, that it was important to get that before the end of the fiscal year, then how are we going to redo that preservation? I don't know. There is this nunc pro tunc thing, this Latin word that means then for now or now for then. And so maybe they can sort of twist around that and use that sort of logic in order to change the order of 9,095. But I don't know. It just feels a bit wrong. But the lawyers who know way more than I do say it's possible. Our side lawyers say it's possible. So who knows? We'll see. Maddie, I'm the winner of 2022, case number 8. Oh, we've done that one. When should we submit DV 2022 documents? Now. Now is the answer. Why are you waiting? You just saw all the evidence, all the information we gathered about, whether people can submit documents early or not. Can they submit documents without being asked? We know they can. It works for some people. We know it works. And so as long as you do the document procedure correctly, and I've got a FAQ, there's a guide on my blog about how to do it, what documents to send, how to name them, how to put the subject line in, right? Very important. You put the subject line in as your case number, your complete case number. No, don't drop anything like the leading zeros from your case number. So you need 1, 2, 3, 4. You need 4, 6 plus 3 and 5, 8, 14. So your case number should be a 14-character code, right? Starting off with the year 2022, your region, AF or EU, and then the number with probably 3 or 4 or perhaps even 5 leading zeros before the first actual number, and then your number, right? All of that needs to be in the subject line. But yeah, send the documents. Don't wait for the email. And no, you can't be penalized if you send it before the email. Mahmood, I got a reply from KCC regarding a question. The good, it was from a human and not from a server. Okay. Oh, got you again. Let's turn that one off. I don't know, Martin, whether anyone has received a request for documents yet in DV 2022. If anyone's listening and they have, could you let me know here? That would be interesting. Yes, Saeed, that's fine. Whilst we say to do things as quickly as possible, it doesn't matter, and because you can take a bit more time, and because your case number is not low anyway, it's going to be some time before they get to your case number regardless, right? So yes, waiting 16 days doesn't make any difference at all. Yassine, so COVID is making a big comeback in some countries. Do you think that the government will use it as an excuse to keep the DV interviews on hold? I don't like this word excuse. My mother died from COVID, so I'm very painfully aware that COVID is not an excuse. It's not something I would like to describe as an excuse, and I differ with some of the lawyers about that. I'm very clear with what the government haven't done. I'm very clear with their inactions, but let's not pretend that COVID isn't a big deal. COVID is a big deal. People are dying. There's millions of people have died from COVID. And so it is perfectly reasonable to understand and expect some people to be more nervous about exposing themselves to COVID. I'm fully vaccinated, but even now, I've got a business trip coming up I just did one to LA. I've got some other business trips coming up. And I'm wondering whether I should be taking those business trips. One's to Las Vegas, which is in Nevada. And Nevada has had a lax approach to masks and vaccinations. Do I want to expose myself? Because the vaccination isn't 100% a barrier against COVID, and it's a lower effect against the Delta variant than others. So let's not fall into this silly trap, of calling things an excuse. It's not an excuse. COVID is real. Now, could they use that as a way of saying, look, this embassy can't open because of COVID in the area? Yeah, absolutely, they could. India was going through a terrible time with COVID just a while ago. I think things are improving a little bit, but I wouldn't go anywhere near the embassy in India right now. I wouldn't go anywhere near it, right? And so, and clearly people have died in some of these embassies. So it wouldn't be at all a surprise if the government say, no, we're not going to open that embassy. I don't care what you say. Now, does that mean they couldn't find a way of interviewing people through Zoom or something? No, they should find other ways of interviewing people. But it's reasonable to expect that they've got some precautions, including keeping an embassy closed if the local conditions are that bad. That's not an excuse. That's just logic. Okay. When will you receive the 2NL? Like the question I answered earlier, I don't know. I'm not going to predict any particular, dates or times or case number ranges for DV2022 at the moment. There's just too much going on. Yeah, I agree with you, Abfectum. They are open, but not taking DV cases because they consider that they're at the lower end of the totem pole. So, but it would take a judge's order to say, yeah, move them up in the totem pole. That's what I was saying earlier. DV2020 AP, you're just waiting for the Gomez outcome, same as any other DV2020. The only advantage you would have is that since your case is already at the embassy, you might be able to get a fast track towards those 9,095 visas that other people can't get. But you will need to repeat your medical, and they might ask for a refresher of some documents if they're very old. So, it's not an automatic thing, but you have a good chance if Judge Mehta says, yes, go ahead and now start issuing those visas. Okay. Long question here from Omar. So your 2022 AS29 case, that's a pretty high case number, Omar. I hope you understand that. Do you have to attest and stamp documents by the Iraqi ministry? Blah, blah, blah. Read the instructions is what I would say. The instructions are different in every country. So whether you need the Iraqi ministry to attest a document or whatever is all contained in the reciprocity page and the local page for, for your country. So read the instructions, which will take you to the embassy-specific instructions and the reciprocity page. There isn't a generic answer I can give you because it's different in every country, right? You sent a request to reopen the DS260 to correct some errors. Do I send the required documents? You can send the documents. The documents themselves don't change, right? Your birth certificate doesn't change because you made a mistake in the DS260, right? So, they're the same documents. Your passport is the same document. Your police certificate is the same document. The only difference there would be if you're opening the DS260 to add some sort of country that wasn't on there before. That will now make it clear that you need to provide another police certificate, let's say, or it could make it clear that you need to provide another police certificate, in which case you resend all of your documents, right? That's basically it. But there's no harm in sending documents while you've got an unlock request. Pierre Batista, if I include a PDF in the name of the document, no, it's okay. Doesn't matter. It still opens as a PDF. Test it. Double click on that, and it will open in Adobe Acrobat or whatever PDF reader you have. And so they don't care how you've named it. If it's got double PDF, that's fine. Oh, you're going to come and visit me because we made you very tired. I look tired. Yes, you're right. You're right, Alan. Absolutely. You're from Eritrea, living in Ethiopia. Can I apply without a passport? If there's no way you can obtain a passport from Eritrea and you're a refugee in Ethiopia, then yes, you may be able to apply. But read the instructions carefully. If they consider that you could have obtained a passport but just couldn't be bothered, then you will be denied, right? So, but I'm aware of the situation here in Eritrea, and it may be that you would meet the standard required to get an excuse to not submit your passport. So if you want to try, you're welcome to try. Okay. Marty, stop repeating this question. I've answered it. That's a weird question. Do I think there will be interviews same as last year in September? What do you mean, Nazade? Do you mean will there be a sudden flood of interviews? So the lawyers are wrong about this when they say things like they did 7,000 interviews in 3 weeks. They say things like that, all of them, even the most highly respected, the ones that I think are the best lawyers. They say things like that, and they use that number as being an excuse to say, well, come on, they should be able to issue 10,000, 15,000 visas in 2.5 weeks or something. They extrapolate that way. It's not true. So the reason it's not true is, number one, KCC only scheduled about 1,000 of those cases that were issued in the final days of DV 2020. So about 1,000 interviews were scheduled by KCC. An additional 3,000 or so interviews happened because there were cancellations from earlier in the year, right? And in that latter case, the case was already at the embassy, and those people were able to take advantage of being very quickly able to get a medical interview and that sort of thing. But you can't suddenly spring 5,000, 6,000 interviews on the world and expect all the doctors of the world, for example, who would have to do all those physical interviews and the physician appointments. You can't expect them to suddenly gear up and drop everything else they're doing and just do these DV things. It's not going to work like that. The system doesn't work like that. And so, will we see the same level of activity as in DV 2020? No, I don't think we will. I hope we see some good activity, but I don't think we will. So it looks like we're on track to issue about 12,000, maybe 13,000 visas without the impact of the lawsuit, right? And maybe the lawsuit by September 30th could add another 2,000 or 3,000 to that. But we're not going to see another 10,000 added to that by September 30th. We're just not. And, I don't understand why people don't understand that, but it's very obvious, very clear. So there you Atito, that's an interesting name. Right, you've got a personal question in regards to my case that I'd like to share with you. Kindly advise on the mode. The mode is to ask it through my blog. There's very few personal questions, unless you want my phone number because you want to date me. I mean, but I'm married, right? I'm married, and I don't date. So I'm sorry. There's very few other personal questions that need to be asked of me in private. Most questions, even though they're personal to you, can be asked in a way that's anonymous, where you don't give personal information. And frankly, just go ahead and ask it on the blog, right? There's no need to do anything else. If you are absolutely convinced that you can't ask the question in a public forum like my blog, then explain to me why not, right? You can tell me what information you have to tell me in order to ask the question, but it would be very weird, very rare. So almost entirely, I reject questions that are asked of me by email. I very rarely get involved in cases one-to-one, right? Angelo, I received 2NL, 26th of July. Will I get scheduled before September 30th? That makes no sense. The 2NL is the interview schedule, right? So if you mean that you received the ready for scheduling email or the request for documents or whatever, those things are not the 2NL. So I don't know what you received on the July 26th. You might want to explain a little bit better, but it wasn't the 2NL. And because the next part of your question is, will I get scheduled? Well, the 2NL is your schedule if you received a 2NL. So there's some confusion there. Oh, Maddie. Alan. Yeah. Already answered that one. Luca, how you doing? I have inside info from my embassy that they will contact KCC once DQ. I believe Go will cause some action. That's interesting. So this is an interesting thing. There is a case I'm aware of. Somebody has contacted me and proven to me that they were documentarily qualified in August. It was actually August 5th of last year. And their case number is in the 1500 range in OC region. Pretty low number, pretty good number. And their embassy is Fiji, which has set up about 155 interviews so far, I think, the last time I checked a few days ago. So there is every reason why a case like that should already have been interviewed, at the embassy at Fiji. Now, I'm aware of the cancellations earlier, fine, that being accepted. There are other cases higher than that. Fiji have accepted cases for interview up to OC 3300, I think. So a case at 1500 that was documentarily qualified almost a year ago should certainly have been should have been interviewed. And in that scenario, I told that person to contact KCC and the embassy, because I think by contacting the embassy, maybe the embassy will contact KCC and say, here's a case we believe you've told is documentarily qualified, so therefore send us that case, right? And Luca, what you're suggesting is the same sort of thing, where you can show the embassy that you're documentarily qualified and that they can send it to you. The only thing I would say is that you can't necessarily, that they would contact KCC for you in order to get the case. The only thing you don't know is how many people are in front of you, right? So when did you become documentarily qualified? And that's the question. And KCC are juggling that. But if the embassy are making 50 appointments available for this month, and KCC are only sending 2 people, and the embassy know that there are other cases, DQ, that are not being sent, then absolutely the embassy can be contacting KCC and saying, what's going on? Why haven't you sent us that case, right? So yeah, that would be good. That would be awesome, Luca. I hope that comes off. And your last point, I do believe also that Go will cause some action. I think Go is farther along than the other cases. It's been argued very well, represented very well, so yes, I think there's going to be some action from the Go case. I hope so. No, Edith, get a sponsor. Get an I-134, as I mentioned to someone earlier. Okay, Grizzly Mob, great name. The documents still need to be reviewed every 3 months, or is it based on the country's policy? No. The birth certificate, America doesn't consider birth certificates go out of date, expiry date, even though local rules might say they do. American immigration doesn't look at it that way. Follow local procedures, yes, but the American government, for immigration purposes, recently changed its policy to accept police certificates up to 2 years old. Whereas many countries say on the police certificate, this document is only valid for 3 months or for 6 months or whatever. But for immigration, for DV lottery immigration, any immigration, they'll take them up to 2 years old. So the same would apply to birth certificates, even if local rules say the birth certificate is too old, right? So yeah, it should be fine. I mean, a birth is a birth. It happens one time. It should be easy. B1 rejection due to no solid history of family travel impact DV approval. No, it's not going to. Basically, that rejection says we don't trust you. On a B1 application, they're saying they don't trust you to return to your country. They think you're going to try and stay in America and break the rules. With a DV lottery application, it's bloody obvious you want to stay in America, and that isn't an issue. It's not a factor for for rejection. So no, as long as you didn't lie in the process in the B1 application, haven't caused yourself any problems that way, then no, it's no impact. People said that wrapping the documents after the completion of the procedures may lead to a non-acceptance of the document. Oh, wrapping what's that called? Laminating, right? There are some countries where if they see a laminated document, they assume it's fraudulent, and so yeah, be careful. But it depends on the country, so you have to think about what the rules are in the country. The places, the embassies that tend to be nervous to that tend to be in West Africa, where document fraud is rife, so the West African countries, they tend to be the ones, but it could, in theory, be any country could be concerned about document lamination. CCAR, let me know. Birth certificate and original is different. Is different from birth certificate and passport and DS260. No problem. No problem at all. As long as the city that we're talking about is another city in the same country. So in other words, you didn't claim to be from France, but you were actually born in Morocco, for example. If that's what you mean by by a city difference, that would be a problem. But if the city is in France and you said Paris, but actually it was I don't know, Rouen or something, it was some other city in France, that's not a problem, right? Same country, no problem. Just seeing a lot of repeated questions here. Okay, Jeremiah. 2021 winner became DQ since July 31st of 2020. Massively odd. Your embassy is Monrovia. They've only scheduled 13 out of 1,858 cases for interview. The 1,858 isn't accurate, but I take the point. They've only scheduled 13 cases. I got ready for scheduling since March. Oh. So DQ and ready for scheduling are the same thing. So is it that people misunderstand what DQ is? Ready for scheduling email is the DQ email. So you said you became documentarily qualified since July 31st of 2020. That's when you became, that's when you got an, is that when you were told you were ready for scheduling, or was it March? Because you didn't, unless you got the ready for scheduling email, you've got no proof that you are documentarily qualified. That's just when you sent the documents, and maybe they said, thanks for sending your documents, we'll let you know when they're processed. That's not documentarily qualified. So, but regardless, not regardless, that actually makes a big difference, right? So if you were DQ in July of last year, then that's very early. But if you only just sent your documents in July of last year, July 31st of last year, and you weren't actually DQ, then unfortunately that's not very early. So in one case, I would expect you to get an interview. And if your actual date of DQ is only in March of this year, then I would not expect you to get an interview because they're not at that part. Yeah, Esther, I saw that. They didn't say they don't want to be a part of the class. Let's be clear. It's amazing how two people can listen to the same words and this person has a different understanding of what they said. If you rewatch the Impact video, what they said was they don't think they would want to be a part of it, but they don't know, and they would have to consider it at the time when they understand the other factors. So it's not, they didn't say they definitely don't want to be a part of it, right? They will consider it if it suits them at the time. That's what they said. Okay. Yep. The bill will go to Congress, but with or without that amendment is what we don't know, right? So we don't know for sure whether the Meng amendments are going to become law or not. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. Did you hear that the embassy in Ankara suspended acceptance of lawful residents? Oh yeah, I saw I saw very briefly on Twitter that they want nationals only. They're only going to cope with nationals. I think they'll accept local residents. What they won't accept is people from neighboring countries. That's a different thing. And most embassies are behaving that way. But I didn't read it well enough. Perhaps they actually said they would only accept nationals. Let me just quickly see. I'm just reading it now, so just for a second. For Turkish nationals and individuals with current and legal, there you go, that's what I just said. So it's not only for, I mean, it's just people who live in Turkey is what they're saying. They're saying for Turkish nationals and individuals with current and legal Turkish residency. So if you're legally current, you're resident in Turkey, or you're a Turkish national in Turkey, then you can be interviewed in Turkey, which is the same situation for other embassies too. Same thing, right? So that's no real change to other countries, and it's the same thing that I've been saying for months now. Documents that we've translated or combined. Either way, it doesn't matter whether you combine them or don't combine them, as long as you name them so somebody who's looking at your documents for the first time can very quickly see what those documents are. Doesn't matter, just use your own judgment on that. Send all the required documents, cases at MVC, also embassy in Afghanistan closed. Can you tell us after, there is no 31st of September. So the chances end on September 30th, not 31st, September 30th. That's the end of the fiscal year. So the only chance, well, there's two chances we have for anything to happen after that date. One is because the judge preserves visas and says they can be worked on after that date. And the second thing would be the Meng Amendment, number 1, that is a proposed bill, a proposed law that is going through Congress at the moment, that may or may not achieve that result. One of the two things has to happen, otherwise things will end on September 30th. No real update on DV2022, but there's none expected. There's nothing would normally be happening at that on that case. Johannesburg Embassy. What's your understanding of the Johannesburg? I don't know whether they're interviewing or not. Oh, your DV2022. I don't know. I mean, AF 11,000. You're hoping to. I mean, it's probably not realistic. No, you're probably not going to get interviewed in November or December. But very few people will. And Johannesburg, I don't know what the situation is, but it could change between now and then, obviously, one way or the other, for the better or for the worse. But just in general, there's not going to be many interviews in DV 2022 in October, November, December. So don't plan on that. Plan on it being later, right? I saw Zero's explanation. However, lower cases were neglected despite his submitting documents correctly. Yeah, I saw a number of people who misunderstood the whole thing. So document processing order, I'm very clear on. I'm 99.9% certain that I'm right in what I'm saying on that, right? It's obvious they're applying an order. It's obvious from the data that we're seeing. Those things are obvious, right? The leading zeros part of my explanation in the video is a guess. I bet it's right, but I'm not quite as certain because it's not backed up by data to prove it, as my other main point is. My main point being the document processing order, please listen to what I'm saying, is done, is done based on case number, right? When there's a backlog of cases in the inbox, they're going to go through that in case number order. That's what I'm saying. And the evidence of that is very clear. We can see that in the way that they're scheduling. And then some people said, oh yeah, but I'm a low case number and I didn't get scheduled, so your theory is obviously wrong. Or they say, oh, here's a high case number and they've been scheduled. I've explained both things, right? And those things about scheduling or about not scheduling, those sort of questions don't mean that the theory is not correct. It just means that you haven't watched the bloody video and understood what I've said. That's what it means, essentially, right? So some high cases got scheduled because they hit the inbox of KCC documents early, very early, when there was no big backlog. And so the inbox got emptied out, meaning that any high case number could have been processed. And that would have been true in the early days of DV 2021 processing, which was really around about June to July, possibly early August. So cases that truly got documentarily qualified by that time have been scheduled now, even though they've got high case numbers. That's fine. Now, if you waited until March to submit your low case number documents, they would have been processed quickly, but that doesn't mean that you would have got an interview by now, because there's tons of people, now that everyone's all current, your case number is irrelevant, but there's tons of people who are documentarily qualified in front of you, and the scheduling of cases is being done on documentarily qualified order because everybody is current. So I've said all these things, but apparently some people can't hold all these things in their brain long enough to understand that all these things that I've said can be true at the same time. And pointing at a high case number that got scheduled is not evidence of the theory not being true. That's not evidence of that. And pointing at a low case number that did not get scheduled is also not evidence of that, right? That's what that means. So I've spent a long time trying to explain these things, and still people drive me nuts, actually, when I post a video and within 1 minute of posting a video, there's someone saying, oh, that's not right. That's not right. No, my friend got that. No, you didn't even watch the bloody video. So don't tell me within 1 minute of posting the video that my theory is wrong. And a week after I posted my video, if you still haven't watched the video and you still think the theory is wrong, then I don't know how to help you. Omar. Oh, we've already done that, Omar. Right, let's just take a few more. I'll quickly try and scan through these. Chin, 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 chin. This is a question particular to adjustment of status. So it's all handled by the field offices. And my personal experience of that was that that it was all based around on when you make the application and how far through the application you are, etc., and that none of that has any bearing on the case number. They don't schedule cases for interview based on case number or anything else like that. And there's no reason why they should, because once a case is current and all cases become current, or cases are current at the same number ranges, there's no more preference between the two of them. It's just a matter of how the cases are processed. In my particular case, I did adjustment of status in 2014. They had, I was actually current in June, and I had submitted my paperwork early, and I was in good shape to have an early interview. And they kept me waiting until September, and I didn't get interviewed until September the 2nd. Despite me visiting the office and explaining to them how DV lottery is supposed to work, I really did, because they had no freaking idea. And this was San Francisco office. So I actually sort of went and educated them, and it was quite a funny day. But still, what they did was they batched me together with other applicants, some of whom were higher case numbers than mine and some were lower or whatever, but they batched them all together, and they just did it based on their own convenience. They did it based on the convenience of having a field officer available on September 2nd who could interview several cases. So yeah, it was kind of annoying, to be honest, but nevertheless, years later, I've forgotten about that almost. Okay, I'm just seeing if I can find any more new questions. Seeing a lot of repeated questions. I see a couple of you are connecting. That's great. People in South Africa are going through tough times with local conditions right now, not only in COVID, but politically. So keep safe, all of you. Okay. Okay, so Alicia, you followed the instructions at the time. You had a valid passport when you applied. I send the documents. You forgot to include the passport biographic page. Do it. Resend everything. Resend the whole package. Get it right. And if your passport has since expired and you've replaced it, then send both the old and the new copies of the passport. And when we say copies of the passport, yeah, we mean the biographic page. That's what they want, right? Not the front of the passport or something. When can you submit documents? If you're a DV2022, submit them now. Get them in. Answer my question is something very changed. So it drives me nuts when people, oh, here we go. It just happens to be above here. Okay, good. Right, you're an Afghan refugee in a second country, Azerbaijan, and I've been searching for DV2022. Unfortunately, the embassy has been closed. Right. What do you think is very strange about that? There's nothing strange about that. You're really stuck and you don't know what to do. Just be a bit patient. There's a year, DV2022 interviews haven't started yet. And obviously conditions with COVID are going to get better or worse. We don't know, but there'll be changes, right? And so, just got to be a little bit patient. Is your case number very low? Oh, you don't mention it, but it's not that there's something special or unusual about your case. Lots of people are going through the exact same thing, right? Is Mela? I want to ask about the interview because I've never experienced these interviews. What do they ask in the interview? In October, I have interview with them. Nobody has been scheduled in DV Lottery in October yet. I'm certain of that. But let's just cover that as if you're a DV Lottery candidate, which I suspect you're not. But for DV Lottery, the questions are very, very simple, very quick. The interviews last 2, 5, 10 minutes at most. There's very little time spent. It would only be where there's concern about someone's situation that any interview would take longer than that. So for DV Lottery, it's conversation. There's not really questions that they ask. They don't say, can you multiply 363 by 17? It's not like that. There's no complicated questions. They'll ask you things like, oh, I see you're married. When did you meet? Have you been on any vacations together and that sort of thing? Or it could be, where did you go to school? What do you plan to do in the USA? Very conversational. They might be looking for some information in that, but nothing particularly, right? There's no complicated questions. So people ask me, please give me the answers for the questions in the interview. And I'm saying, like, whatever is your answer at the time is the right answer. That's all it is, right? You don't prepare. If you can't answer the questions, which is just having a conversation, then it shows there's something strange about your case. And by strange, I mean fraudulent. So, okay, covered that one. Already covered that one. Okay, let's see if I can find an interesting question. You asked me, please read again. Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. So where it's got the underlined bit of, is this you? It's Hozimia. Family-based immigrant visas so you have to read this in context. So let's see, immigrant visas for immediate relatives and fiancés of American citizens adopted and lawful residents. Diversity visas, Turkish nationals only, employment-based. Yeah, just ignore it. Is what I said earlier. If there is a resident locally, I mean, obviously it's Turkey, right? I mean, I've got my own views about that, but it's not the best embassy, I have to say. But nevertheless, it's not really up to them. If somebody lives in Turkey and KCC schedule them based on the fact that they live there, that person isn't going to be rejected by the embassy. They're not. It doesn't matter what they put and what it says on Twitter. They're not, because if somebody in the DS-260 had pointed out that they're living in Turkey, no matter whether they were born there or not, or a national of Turkey or not, then they will be scheduled by KCC in the Turkish embassy, right? And Turkish embassy have got nothing to say about that. What the Turkish embassy can say is that they're not going to accept someone who's traveling in from another country to take an interview there. They can say they're not going to accept that. And so that's what they're saying, okay? It's as simple as that. Okay, one more question then. How do I know about EDV? How do I know about EDV? About the DV lottery? I know about that because I was, so history about me, I'm not a winner, but I was a derivative of my wife's application. We won in the DV 2014 year.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
My Alexa isn't sure about that. We won in the DV 2014 year. And so in 2013, I was going through the process and I learned about the process because that's what I do. And since then, I've been helping people with DV lottery. So I've got a blog. I have millions of visits to my blog every year. I've got a YouTube channel. I have a Twitter account, and I do these videos, right? So how do I know about it? That's how I know about it. Oh, no, I mean, I should also say I've studied it, obviously. I've studied all of the relevant laws in the INA, in the 9FAM documentation, which is the guide for consular officers. I've studied all the instructions I could find. I've studied some lawsuits. There was an interesting lawsuit in 2012. I studied that extensively. Just gathered all the information I could from all over the place. Oh, the SEAC data. So I was one of the original people that was working towards getting the original SEAC data, and that's gone through many iterations. But a lot of our understanding has been built around about the SEAC data. So I described myself as an expert in DV lottery. In the lawsuit the other day, in the hearing, the government objected to that description of myself. And it's true, I don't have a formal qualification in DV lottery because there is no such thing. But I hesitate to I wouldn't hesitate to say I know more than those than that government lawyer about the DV lottery. That's for sure. So there you go. All right. Okay. All right, one or two quick more questions. Is there any chance of visa interviews in Kathmandu? I understand that they're starting to schedule, but I could be wrong on that, so I don't know. Wait and see is what I would say there. And then this question: one, submit police reports for derivative, or it's only required? No, it's required for anyone over the age of 16. So if you're, yourself, your spouse, and any children over the age of 16 will need police reports. They'll also need birth certificates and passports. And birth certificates and passports are necessary for kids under 16, of course, as well. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that was useful. I hope I answered enough questions for you, but I need to get back to work now. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.